And this is my co-host Benno. I don't think you guys have interacted before, have you?
Oh, pleased to meet you,
Oh,
Florence.
nice to meet you too.
Oh,
So
great.
Thanks,
Thanks for
Florence,
joining us. We've
thanks
got
for
2 hours
having
left,
me.
and
Oh
you're
my
no
gosh. Oh my
pressure,
gosh.
but you're going to carry us through
Yeah.
to that last hour.
Oh man. So this is the home stretch. This is crazy.
There you go.
Oh
we're
man, you
just
guys have
feeling
been
slightly
at it.
delirious now, yeah.
Oh
So if we
my
go off on
gosh.
tangents, I do apologise. So obviously, Florence is coming on to change it up a bit from the normal wrestling chat we've had all day. Obviously, it goes under the artist name Glitbiter. Just released a fantastic new EP, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Well, I don't know if it's fantastic, but thank you.
How was that? Because obviously there was quite a bit of time between the last music you released and then the music that's just come out recently.
Oh,
Was that did the
yeah.
pandemic give you a chance to work on some new music then?
Well, not necessarily new music. I've had this EP, the EP that I just released, I've had it ready to go for ages now. And it was just a matter of one, I mean, there was a lot of procrastination, I'm
Mm.
not gonna lie. But I'll also I ran into some trouble where I had people who were gonna help me with it and then they didn't. So in the end I just was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do this myself. And I did most of it myself. I did have some help. I had one of my wonderful friends, Mike Balboa, who mixed a couple songs for me. But the in the end, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna mix it, and that's gonna be it. And I just needed like it after so long. I was like, I need to get something out there.
Mm.
So I did it, and it's it's out there, which is cool.
Yeah, definitely. I've been enjoying listening to it for sure. But I
Thank
suppose
you.
sort of like rewinding for the start for people who are unfamiliar, you are.
Mhm.
Would you describe yourself as a synthwave artist? That seems to be something that's become, quite popular, in the last couple of years.
Well, yeah, no, it's funny because I don't because the true like hardcore people, they my stuff is not synthwave at all. It's more like kind of dark synthy pop something. I don't know. You can describe it however you want. Because a lot of people describe synthwave as just like pure straight up instrumental music that has like elements of the 80s or 80s music, but in a like used in a modern way.
Mm-hmm.
So my stuff isn't necessarily 80s, but it takes um it takes ideas from synths, 80s synths and all of that, and I just kind of do my own thing with it. So I'm not gonna go out and be like, yeah, my stuff is synthwave because it's not really, but I'm very closely associated with that scene. And to me, the synthwave scene, it's more of a scene and not really a genre. So
Mm.
I'm like part of that community, part of that scene, but my music is, you can call it whatever you want.
What
There
kicked
you
off
go.
that scene? Was it like, I think the obvious thing that comes to mind is like the Drive soundtrack and
Mhm.
Kavinsky in college and maybe a bit of M83 as well. Would that be accurate, would you say? Is that kind of like
Yeah. Yeah, and
sort
that
of
I mean those were definitely the that's where the scene got its at least not necessarily start because it people have been making this kind of music for years now. And
Mhm.
I don't want to paint myself, I'm not like a synthwave historian. There are a lot of people who are like they're synthwave historians. That's what they do. Um but um but that's I mean that's where it really got a lot of popularity. It got from definitely from the Drive soundtrack. And yeah, M83 because like I was into M83 but when they were kind of big, I don't know, was that like 10 years ago?
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't really get into synthwave until what was it? It was the thing that really, and also like because I saw Drive and
Mhm.
I liked the soundtrack, it was cool, and I think I ended up listening to the Kavinsky album, but it wasn't really enough for me to go like, oh man, like I really need to find more of this music because I just didn't know there was any out there and I had no idea what to listen to. But it wasn't until I found this act called Dance with the Dead, they're kind of like more darker, metal oriented, synth synthy. They do not describe themselves as synthwave either, but they're again, part of that scene.
I feel like I've made a massive faux pas here describing anything as synthwave.
I know, no, it's funny because I'm associated with that scene. I love and I'm friends with a lot of people within that scene, but again, it's like I'm not going to be like, yeah, I'm a synthwave artist because I'm not really, but so when I discovered this band Dance with Ed, they kind of just started this I just went down a rabbit hole and found a bunch of I was like, oh, cool. There's like synthwave podcasts and there's labels that have synthwave artists. And from there, I was just like, well, I can write this kind of music because I've kind of been writing this kind of music, but I just never really had an outlet for it. So that was kind of the inspiration that started the Glitbiter project.
Yeah, because obviously your name Glitbiter, you're obviously a huge Star Wars fan. Would you like to explain to our listeners where that name comes from?
Yes, of course. Yeah, because people, it's funny because people hear the word Glitbiter and they do a double take because they're like, did that start with a C or G there? Like, what are you? Totally, like, not necessarily like intentional because I just liked this word to begin with before I even realized that's what it sounded like. But I do kind of like people do a double take for it because it makes you remember me, which is something that I can at least have in my pocket. But anyway, so the term Glitbiter is actually in the Star Wars lore, and I don't believe it is canon. It is from Legends, so that's not official. But in lots of the Legends novels, a Glitbiter is a slang term for a drug addict.
Wow.
A person who is addicted to the spice glitter stem, which is mined on the planet Kessel. Again, Legends, not actual canon. I mean, of course, I'm not like an advocate of drugs or anything. I'm an advocate of, don't do drugs, kids. They're bad. But it's funny. I was kind of like, well, but I like when I obviously knew what the term meant, but I just liked the word so much because it sounds like glitter. I like glitter. Glitter's cool. And I was just like, yeah, you know what? I can kind of make it so like when you listen to my music, it's almost like you're on drugs, but it's like you're just listening to music, which is totally hilarious. But yeah, and it just like, I don't know, it's stuck. I don't know. I like it. It's fine. It's done me well so far, so I can't complain.
Oh, definitely. You must be buzzing as well by the fact I've just Googled Glitbiter and you are there's 7 things about you before we even get to what it is in Wikipedia, which is obviously Star Wars fandom.
That's the other thing that I really like about it is I totally like own the SEO for it. It's great. Like, sir, if you Google Glitbiter, it's all my stuff, and I'm like, cool, that's awesome. Like, I'm good. Like Wikipedia, it's down there, but yeah, it's mostly me if you Google Glitbiter. So I can't complain because there are a lot of artists who, if you Google their name, you get like 5 million random results before you actually find the artist. So, hey, I'm easy to find on the internet. Can't complain. It's been great.
I'm not going to Google Glitbiter, but I think the police will be knocking on my door.
Actually, Martin, I dare you to type in clitbiter.com.
Okay. If I get the feds smashing through the window, I'm going to do it simultaneously.
I love it.
It just brings you it brings you right to my Bandcamp.
Oh, amazing.
Oh, that's smart marketing. I like that.
Yep. Yeah, so, and because I was like, you know what, I better buy clitbiter.com just in case. So I do own clitbiter.com too.
That is awesome. You haven't had any emails off anybody with a really weird fetish or anything then?
No, I have not, and I'm happy about that. I mean, I'm not famous or anything, so maybe in the future, who knows what'll happen, but But no,
Well
it's been
played.
fine
That's
so far.
brilliant, though. That's brilliant. Well played on that. But I suppose in terms of like music, obviously you've told us why you got into the genre. But you've got a background in music. When you were you classically trained? And because obviously as well as sort of like playing music, you sing on the tracks as well.
Yeah. So I mean, I've always had music in my life. My family was very musical oriented, even though none of them were actually musicians. There was just a really high appreciation for music when I was growing
Mm.
up within my family and friends and everything. And I started taking piano lessons in first grade. So I took piano lessons throughout high school. And I always was singing. My mom did get me voice lessons at first because people told her like, don't get her voice lessons, like wait till her voice like kind of like levels out. And then
Mm.
in high school, that's when I started taking voice lessons. So I started the voice classically training stuff in high school, and I studied that throughout college. And in college, I ended up taking some Pro Tools classes. So I learned how to basically do computer recording and all of the basics of that. And when I for a really long time after I graduated college, didn't really do music at all. I was just like, yeah, I want to be a singer in a band. And I just didn't really have an outlet for it because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But when I discovered synthwave, I was like, well, I can like put together like electronic music on because I know how to use. I had taught myself how to use Logic, which is another DAW, because Pro Tools was too expensive. So I was like, okay, I'll just learn Logic. So I was like, okay, I'll like try and write a synthwave song, and it just kind of like tumbled along, and I kind of found my own sound. And so yeah, I've been doing music for a while, I guess. It's but yeah, only in the last like few years have I really like done it.
What sort of stuff were your parents playing then? What sort of stuff did you grow up with? What were your like influences and things when you were when you were a kid and a teenager?
So I grew up, interestingly enough, like I love like electronic stuff, but I grew up with a lot of like classical music, and my grandfather and my mom, they played like classic Broadway shows for me growing up. Like I was obsessed with Oklahoma by Rodgers and Hammerstein, and my mom on her side, she listened to a lot of folk rock. So I grew up with like James Taylor, Jimmy Webb, Judy Collins, and so it's funny because like I don't necessarily like today I don't necessarily go and listen to that music. Like I would maybe choose something else, but that's it heavily influenced me, at least in terms of melody and chord progressions and stuff. So I feel like I have at least a good understanding of what a good song, like how a good song is written, even though I was never like formally trained on songwriting. So yeah, it's interesting. There wasn't a lot of like I guess I didn't grow up listening to a lot of the very popular stuff. It was just kind of like, well, my mom liked this, and so I just listened to it, and it was great. It's all really, really amazing stuff. So yeah.
When you decided to start doing your own music, obviously you mentioned you had dreams to maybe start with a band and stuff. Was that ever considered, or were you like, no, this is sort of like solo project now that I want to do by myself? Or did you ever look around sort of like, because you're based in LA, and obviously I imagine there's millions of musicians based in LA. Was it something you were like, oh, look around and maybe join a band with this genre of music, or were you always like, no, I'm gonna go solo with it?
Well, it's funny. I also love metal, especially power metal and like symphonic power metal stuff like that. When in high school, I got into the band Nightwish, who, if back in the day, their singer used to be an opera singer. Their current singer is pretty much an opera singer too. But that blew my mind because I was like, cool, like this is something that like I'm studying opera, and like here's this metal band that's like kind of just crossing the two genres. So yeah, again, blew my mind. So I always had this idea that I wanted to be in like either a metal band or an electronic band because I liked, kind of that genre, that those two genres. But I just, again, I never really had a clear idea of what I wanted to do. And I didn't really have anyone that I could like, I don't know, get advice from, or like I had people I could get advice from, but I didn't want to just join a random band. I wanted it to be like friends of mine, and like it, I don't know. I just waited a really long time and nothing ever happened because obviously if you don't do it yourself, like again, it's like I kind of learned like if I do it myself, then things are going to happen. So I never, again, like I never really, it never really happened for me. And I was like, oh, it'd be really cool if I could do like vocals for something or do like session work. But again, nothing happened. But when it was really when I discovered synthwave, and the synthwave world, it's a lot of just bedroom producers, which is essentially what I am. And I was like, cool. It's like a lot of like, you know, solo acts or, you know, duos or something who are just, you know, writing music in their bedroom. They're not going to expensive studios and recording. It's like you just record as you go. It's like, cool, I'm back from work. I'm going to go sit down and write a song or something. And I was like, cool, I have the skills to do that. Like, why don't I just be a solo act? So it was really listening to those stories of those people and saying like, yeah, like I could do this because I am literally in the same boat as a lot of these people. A lot of them, they have other full-time jobs. I mean, music is not my full-time job. I wish it was, but yeah, like, I don't know. I guess it was hearing about those solo acts that really like kind of lit a fire under my ass and been like, yeah, like go just do it yourself. It'll be fine. So that's kind of what really started my doing music.
Oh yeah, definitely. And were you sort of like, is there a big scene in LA of sort of like the genre of music you do?
It's not a big scene. The synthwave community / scene it's spread out all over the world. So like I have some friends in Toronto, I have some friends in France, I have some like, and just like all over the United States too. So like if I go, like I grew up in New York, so if I go back to New York, I have a ton of synthwave friends over there, as well. But the scene in LA is like, it's not huge. Like it can't, you know, it's hard to get people to come to shows. Like I can get maybe like, there's like 10 core members, but then there's other like outliers who come to events every now and then. But the community is mostly online. So, but it's also good just because even though I'm in LA, just because I'm in this kind of smaller scene within like the bigger music LA scene, I'm more of a big fish in a small pond than I would be if I was just a random like genre artist in Los Angeles. So that's been cool because it's been actually pretty easy to get shows because I've been really lucky. I'm friends with a lot of people who are like, you know, they want to put on synthwave shows. And so I get asked to play occasionally and it's really great. So yeah, like it's strangely not terrible being in LA as a synthwave artist.
I know you played like the Whiskey A Go Go and some like iconic venues around LA. How do you find performing? So obviously it's just you up there on your own. I suppose you have got the keyboard, but a lot of your songs you sort of like move from behind that as well. How do you find sort of like performing live?
I love performing live. If I could do live shows all the time, that's what I would do. I think it's one because I mean I can, for when I'm actually producing a song and singing, like, you know, I can sing a song, like if I'm recording vocals, I will sing it like 10, 20 times until I get it perfect. So it's like there's less of it's not necessarily easier, but it's like there's less at stake. But you know, when you're playing live, it's like you're in the spotlight, so you only have one chance to get it good. So I like the challenge of it, and it
Mm.
strangely enough, I like a lot of people don't like that, but um, I'm at least confident enough that I'm not gonna like be a total disaster case on stage most of the time. So, uh, but yeah, no. So I like the challenge of it, and again, like I studied classical voice, so most of that has been like, being in a recital hall with a pianist. There's nothing amplified
Mm.
besides just the acoustics of the room. But singing into a microphone and having like monitors in your face and everything, that's a whole different story. And that's something I wasn't trained on. So I'm still like trying, even after I've almost played probably like 20 shows now, but I'm still trying to figure that out and get it and perfect it. So yeah, again, I like the challenge, and I like that at the end of the show, it's like you get instant gratification. It's not like you're waiting for people to buy your album. It's just like you're done. And most of the time, like your friends are there, which I mean, maybe there's two people there, but like still, it's yeah, I like the instant gratification of it too. It's great. Um,
Well, I think you say that as well, but you have performed shows in sort of like New York and Toronto, and seem to be like pre-pandemic, sort of like getting quite a heavy list of shows together.
Yeah. So and I when I played in New York, that was cool because again, I have like a lot of synthwave friends in New York, and my most of my family's in New York. So like I had a lot of people there who came to see me, which is really cool. Um, and actually one of the coolest things that happened, my like one rock star experience was when I got asked to open for Drab Majesty. I don't know if you're familiar with those guys, but they're kind of like a dark wave band, like gothy type of band.
Mm.
Um, and they're big. They're LA based, but they're pretty well known in like the kind of dark new wave, like cold wave scene, I suppose. Um, and I got asked to open for them in Kansas, which is in the middle of the United States. So I actually got flown out to Kansas to open for them. And it was cool because I was like, awesome. Like I didn't have to pay for anything. I only had to pay for like a meal at the airport on the way back. And I was
Mm.
like, wow, cool. Like, oh, I'm going to do this all the time. This is great. Um, but so that was really awesome. But I mean, most of the time the shows that I play they're local. Like I actually did play like a post-pandemic show a few weeks ago at the end of June. And my friends had an album release party, and I opened for them. And like the turnout was pretty good for being post-pandemic and being a
Mm.
small synthwave show. So again, can't complain. um, but yeah, no, I hope that things are going to ramp back up because I do love traveling and meeting people, and who at least I know a lot of people on the internet who I've never met. But actually like meeting those people in person, and just you know being or meeting new people too. So I hope that I can play more shows.
When you got the booking for Kansas, were you like Kansas? I can't. I don't know if it's just my British
Literally, yes.
brain, but yeah, I just don't imagine that sort of music going down well in Kansas. Was it a big turnout and stuff?
It was at a pretty small venue because like
Mm.
the band Drab Majesty, they'll sell out a pretty large venue here in LA, but they played essentially it was a bar.
Mm.
But they sold out the bar. So it was strangely like and nobody there was really there for me. But again, I was able to just, absorb their absorb their crowd, which is great. Um, but no, it was pretty packed. It was really packed. So strangely enough, Kansas.
I
Wichita,
know.
Kansas.
Amazing. So in terms of like you mentioned, sort of like the pandemic, then obviously that will have put a big, you know, a big halt to sort of like your touring plans and things like that. How is it sort of like going in LA? Are you still having restrictions? Restrictions been lifted? You did mention that you played one gig. Have you got any other sort of like gigs coming up in the summer and beyond?
I don't have any gigs coming up. It's so LA's been doing really well pandemic wise. Until 2 days ago when they were like, before that they were lifting all the restrictions and everything was getting back to sort of normal. Like people were still wearing masks here and there, but you actually kind of felt like it was more normal, which was really nice. But then there was a spike 2 days ago. We heard about it, and I think it's probably because people were not careful during 4th of July, which that's people kind of probably gathered a little too much. Again, it's like the unvaccinated people are the ones who are getting the short end of the stick here. But so everything. So we have to wear masks again now. So they're requiring masks inside, but we're still kind of waiting on how this is going to affect everyone in a larger sense.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm happy that at least I got that one show in.
Oh yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah.
Is it affected sort of like over here in the UK? Obviously, a lot of venues have had to close down because they can't afford to keep going, losing like almost a year's worth of like money. Is that been the same where you are? Because obviously there are a lot of sort of like really famous venues around LA and things. Are they still managing to sort of keep afloat?
I haven't heard of any really kind of famous big venues closing. I've heard of a few like, obviously restaurants and venues and stuff like that. They didn't make it. Luckily, most of the ones that I really like are still around. At least they're, fingers crossed. For example, there's my favorite venue in LA, and I have not played this venue, the Troubadour, which is pretty famous. That is still going as far as I know, but at the beginning, pretty much the beginning of the pandemic, that was like on the chopping block. And I was like, oh my God, no, I really want this to be around because I want to play the Troubadour one day. But as far as I know, it's still there. Hopefully someone saved it or something. I don't know, but I still get emails from the Troubadour. So fingers crossed again. But yeah, I mean, there've been smaller places that didn't quite make it, so it's sad. But I mean, new places will pop back up too once everything does kind of get going again.
Yeah, that is a good way of looking at it. Yeah, because obviously the music industry has been affected quite heavily, hasn't it? In this, I know even like big recording artists, are saying how much it's sort of like affected them in terms of not being able to tour and things like that.
Yeah. But there's so many big artists who are posting about tours these days. So hopefully we can at least stay in this keep going in this direction and not fuck it up.
Yeah, exactly. Apart from sort of like your music, of course, there were some people who might not have sort of like be familiar with this genre of music. Who were some people you would recommend to sort of like check out, or maybe user friendly as sort of like a gateway into this sort of like genre of music? I know Carpenter Brute is like a big name artist in sort of like that genre, isn't he?
Yes, and Carpenter, you should definitely check out Carpenter Brute if you don't know about him. If anything, go watch his video for Turbo Killer. It is probably the best music video that I've ever seen in my life. Like I know that's a bold statement, but it is my favorite music video. It's incredible. Carpenter Brute's really good. He's more of the kind of darker synth side of things. If you do like that darker synth side of things, another one that I really like is Perturbator. People also say Perturbator, but I say Perturbator. His newer stuff is more industrial, but his like stuff from like 4 or 5 years ago is more is very much more synthy and like kind of almost 80s influence. Again, that like really darker synth tone. Oh man, I wish I had like a good list. Wait, I should like go through my Spotify and like make sure I'm giving you good artists, because so like the one kind of for like the kind of lighter, more 80s sounding stuff. The one like poster boy artist is the Midnight, but I'm not going to tell you to listen to the Midnight. But I mean they're fine. But let's see.
Are they considered like is a Midnight considered like the too big for sort of like the scene then?
Yeah, they've outgrown the scene a little bit. But I mean they're a gateway drug, so can't complain too much. They have some good songs. But if you do like that type of stuff, definitely listen to FM84. They're really great. They're also kind of one of the bigger artists in the scene. Let's see, local LA synthwave people. Droid Bishop is one of the really awesome ones. Go give him some love because he's amazing. Man, off the top of my head, Dynatron is really cool. He's kind of like spacey synth wavy, kind of almost dark wavy. His stuff is great.
There seems to be a lot of subgenres to this. How do you manage to keep up with them all?
Oh my god, I don't even know. I really don't. Because I just kind of describe stuff the way I think it is, but like there's some people who are like they segment everything into genres, and I'm like, I don't really care. Like it's like if I like it, I'm gonna listen to it. Like I don't care what genre it is. Let's see, what do I have here? You should have told me to list everyone before I got on here.
No, I do apologize. It just came to me now.
No, it's okay. I'm gonna give you some more. I don't know. Well, yeah, listen to Dance with the Dead too. Their stuff is great.
I think you gave us a pretty good list for people wanting to get in there. Would you say the artists are they all like big influences on you?
Are they influences for me?
Yeah.
Oh wait. Sorry. Are these particular artists or what has in? Wait.
Yeah. Sorry. What has influenced you in the music that you're doing currently?
Let's see. Well, I mean, those artists that I listed for sure. It's funny because like a lot of my influences, I feel like I take influences not in terms of sound, but in terms of just like how people go about things, I suppose. Because I love all the artists that I just listed. They're like, I wouldn't consider them like direct influences or anything, but I don't know. It's like influences are like a strange conversation for me always, because again, I like don't want to copy people. So I take ideas like chord progressions, and like, for example, like one of my biggest songwriter influences is Jimmy Webb, who is known as he's a famous songwriter, but not necessarily a performer. He wrote a lot of country music for Glenn Campbell.
Wow.
If you know the song The Highwayman, like he wrote that. He wrote Wichita Lineman, Kansas. And then also like the song MacArthur Park, which Donna Summer sang. And he's an amazing songwriter, and so I'm influenced by the way he writes his music, and his chord progressions are just really brilliant, and I love that. So I kind of like make a patchwork quilt of all my influences, and like for all the synthwave artists, I like the synth sounds that they use. So that's part of what I take, and again, I don't want to copy these people. So I just kind of take like little things from each person. But yeah, there you go.
No, that's a good way to look at it. Like you said, you know, when being out and out copying, so it must be difficult talking about your influences. But yeah, it's always good to sort of like, you know, learn from different things that have come about. So what's going to be next for you? Are you waiting on what's happening with the you know, the pandemic situation in California? Are you going to be working on? Now, obviously, you've just released some new music, but you're one of those people who's constantly writing new stuff or coming up with like ideas for things.
Well, no, I'm not constantly writing all the time. I wish I was one of those people, but I would overwhelm myself if I did that. I have to be in like a really like special mindset to be able to write music, and like it happens like, I don't know, few times a month usually, for me. But I, you know, for future, like immediate future, hopefully I'll get some more shows to play, which I'm really looking forward to. I think I'm going to be doing a live stream pretty soon, in a couple months. So if you're interested, keep an eye out for that. But you know, live shows, that's my true love. So hopefully there will be more of that. And yeah, no, I have, you know, very kind of vague plans of a potential full length album, which
Wow.
because I really want to release a full length album. Only I've been, you know, having this conversation with a lot of people, like, is it better to release a full length album these days, or is it better to just release singles? And I think that singles do better, which is crazy. And it, like, I mean, but it also makes sense. And it's kind of just disheartening because I want to, you know, make a full length. And I think, you know, the way to maybe get around that is to do like to write a full length album, but release kind of a chain of singles. And I've seen a lot of bigger artists do that lately. So I'm like, maybe that's the way to go. But yeah,
Maybe. Is it difficult navigating it now as a sort of like, because obviously the music, you know, how you get it out there and how people pay for it and things like that is ever changing, more so than it has ever. You know, back in the day, no matter what genre of music you were, it was like, I need to get a record deal and I'm sorted, and then I can go on a tour and people pay for things for me and stuff. But now, obviously,
oh yeah.
even like there's a big metal band near to me called While She Sleeps, and they had like they have millions and millions of streams, and you know, you know, sub-headlined, you know, the download pilot that you're starting, like, you know, they sell merch by the bucket load, and even they've had to set up Patreons and things like that. And I think even their album went to number 4 in the charts, because that doesn't mean anything anymore, does it? So it's like, do you find it hard sort of navigating? Obviously, you've got, you know, your full-time job to fall back on, but do you find it hard navigating on how to sort of like be a musical artist in 2021 despite the pandemic?
Oh yeah, no, there's literally like no. I mean, there are a few good ways to make money, but if you're just releasing music and putting that on streaming services, and like again, like I'm no like famous artist, so you know, I make a couple bucks here on Bandcamp every now and then, because Bandcamp is kind of the generally the thing that a lot of people like, at least as like an indie artist, just because you pay. You know, you actually pay for the music files as opposed to just streaming, because like, I don't know, I get like a few bucks a month from Spotify. It's like insane. When, you know, I have like a few hundred streams every now and then. So yeah, like it sucks because, you know, you don't really get money at all. It's I think the way a good way to get money, which I'd love to get into, is have your music licensed for film, for movies, TV shows, commercials, stuff like that. And that there's paychecks there for sure. So I'm interested in kind of getting into that world. So yeah, I don't know, that's like something that I'm like in the future, I want to investigate that. But I mean, like, again, I'm not really, this is not my full-time job, so I'm not trying to like reap all the benefits I can. Like it's been an amazing, fun ride for me, and I like doing what I do just because it's awesome. I get to meet cool people, I get to go to shows and, you know, do all this stuff. So and I don't want it to become too much of a job,
No.
you know.
That's the issue, trying to make that balance, isn't it? You absolutely need to get some merch out there. You've got this brilliant logo that is just dying to be put on a hoodie or a t-shirt.
So okay, don't worry. There's gonna be some merch in the future. I literally have a like a little test Glitbiter t-shirt right in back of me right now. There's a
Oh, wow.
prototype. I have a prototype, so it's coming. Don't worry.
Excellent. I'm
I
very
just-
happy to hear that.
I just got to figure out placement of everything and like the right color, but I should have something out there pretty soon. So don't
Awesome.
worry, it'll come. But I do
Looking
have
forward
pins.
to
I
it.
have little enamel pins. I got those at least.
Indeed. So I suppose music aside, that's all going really well for you. But I sort of knew you pre-Glitbiter, obviously, you know, doing podcasts together and stuff like that, because you were a regular at the Mecca, one of the American meccas of wrestling that's sadly been knocked down now, the Legion Post. And I swear, was it 2015? 2015, you were pretty much
so.
at every PWG show. What were some of your sort of like favorite memories of going to Bowler and some of the
Oh my
wrestlers that came
gosh.
through there? Well,
Well-
obviously the non-problematic ones, because obviously there were a few dodgy wrestlers that came through Reseda. But some of your memories of going there, because obviously it was always on people's lists to go there as like you know, an iconic wrestling venue.
I know, and we actually met you for real in person, because
Indeed.
you got to come with us. Yeah, so well, I'll just, for wrestling, the reason why I was into wrestling, I was like a total newbie in the wrestling world because my wonderful cousin Kristen, who goes by Wanda 102 on the internets, she has been into wrestling forever, and we like didn't really hang out when we were very little growing up, but then we were both in LA and started hanging out probably around 2014, and she always liked wrestling, and so she was always over watching, or I was over at her house, and they would always be watching pay-per-views, WWE pay-per-views, and I was like, this is kind of fun, like. It's the last thing I thought that I would ever get into, but this is kind of awesome. And, you know, her explanations and commentary on everything was really great. And so so she was always like into like WWE, but we started actually going to shows and she started looking into it more. So I just kind of like followed her path, and she obviously discovered PWG. And so the first PWG show we went to was the last PWG show in 2014, which I believe was Black Cole Sun. So it was Adam Cole's quote unquote last PWG show before he went to ROH full time, but then he eventually came back after that. But we had an absolute blast. It was just, you know, the coolest thing we had ever seen in our lives, because it was like, again, the late Legion, American Legion Hall, which hosted the original PWG shows, was this tiny little room. I mean, probably everyone listening to this knows what it is anyway. But it, you know, it was this tiny little room, and they packed a ton of people in there. This would be like a nightmare post-pandemic, but everyone was just really, really into it. Everyone was a really big fan, and you checked your disbelief at the door, and you just, you were just immersed in it. It was total like wrestling immersion, even though like the lighting was shitty. There was like never any air conditioning. It was like the place was terrible. None of the toilets in the bathroom worked. There's like one toilet in the women's bathroom that like everyone was like, okay, we got to get that one because it flushes, but it was just an experience, and it was really, it was awesome. And I think in like 2015, we went to pretty much every PWG show. I think it was the 2015 Battle of Los Angeles. So that was what the second night of that is. Oh man, it was Drew Calloway versus, God damn it,
Mike Bailey.
Thank you.
Classic
Drew Calloway
PWG match.
Oh my gosh, that that was one of my favorite matches in the world. And there was another, there was a lucha match that night too, where people started actually throwing money into the ring. It was just, that was definitely my like highlights of my like wrestling foray, I suppose. Because I have not, just to be honest, I am not caught up on wrestling these days. I think I pretty much like cut off wrestling like around 2017. I just haven't really been into it. Which is like, it's funny because all of the like PWG people have gone over to AEW, and I'm like, oh, I should watch AEW because like, you know, I know all those guys, but I haven't gotten around to it. But I don't know, one of these days I will, and I'll love it. I'll end up just falling down that rabbit hole again. But yeah,
it
good
always grabs you
memories.
back. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's funny
good.
because I was actually reviewing a show a couple of months ago, and it was the Kenny Omega against Mike Bailey show from Mike Bailey match from one of the PWG shows, and you were all in the front row as Kenny was getting his
Yes.
toy chainsaw out. That was that's gone
Yep.
down as a sort of like a classic modern PWG match as well.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, that I do remember that. We were in the front row.
I was going to
I
say,
think-
just to cut in, like, I think like if you go into Reseda and you go into PWG shows in that period, like you've started at the top really there, haven't you? Like the amount of like people like me who are, you know, watching from a distance and watching the DVD months later when it comes out are just jealous of, you know, the fact that you get to go to those shows and get to go to, you know, see
I
years
know.
worth of shows and stuff. Like how after that, like how do you like kind of keep, you know, watch any other wrestling
Exactly.
or keep up with it? You're not going to be watching even AEW. I think watching it on TV probably wouldn't live up to that live atmosphere.
Yeah, no, it was definitely, there was something really special about it. Yeah, and now they're doing PWG, still exists. They're doing it at the Globe Theater, which is this, yeah, it's like basically a venue, like a music venue. I've seen
They fought for
music
years, didn't they? From like moving from that venue and moving there. Like people have given like strong reviews of the new place, even if it's maybe not quite the same.
Oh yeah, no, and like seriously, I'm super like, if I know there's actually a PWG show that I did not get to, I didn't even know about it until everyone was like, oh, we're going to the PWG show. I'm like, oh, maybe I would have liked to do that, but who knows, you know, but like I, you know, if it happened, if I was able to go to the next one, like sure, I'll go. I have no problem with the Globe. The Globe, like there's working bathrooms there. They have like more drink options. It's easy. It's like right on the train. You can actually take public transportation there. It's great. So can't really, I don't know, can't complain. But yeah, no, there was something really, really special about the Legion, the American Legion Hall. And it's funny because I'll explain this to people who aren't really wrestling fans. And I'll be like, yeah, no, like PWG was like so special and blah blah blah. And I'll bring up like videos, because of course there's the classic video. I was not in the crowd for this. This is actually probably a couple of years before we started going, but there's that classic video of where everyone, the entire crowd goes in slow motion. Was I forget the wrestlers in that, but just, I mean, just type in PWG slow motion, you'll find it. But you know, I'll show people that video and they're like, what? They just don't get it. And I'm like, okay, like you just have to be there.
Is that the grenade spot with Chuck Taylor? I do remember that being like a slow motion.
Yeah, no, I think it was Chuck Taylor, and oh man, now I gotta look this up. PWG slow motion. Let's see. Oh yeah, it was Bola 2014, so it was the year before I started going.
I can see Gresham in there as well.
Yep. So good times. But yeah, like people, you just kind of have to be there to understand if you are not a wrestling fan. But yeah, so I'm very grateful that I got to experience that.
Do you feel like it attracted a lot of non-wrestling fans because it was like the hot ticket? Obviously, everyone remembers Sofia Vergara being there, and obviously who was it from? Yeah, and who was it from Boy Meets World? Topanga was obviously the character's name. I can't remember, and then a bunch of other celebrities have gone down there. Yeah.
Oh,
Remember
weird.
Joey
I don't
Janela was having his
remember.
picture taken with her.
Yeah,
kind of became the
he
hot
was
ticket.
he was there with Sofia however you say your last name. I remember like them being in the front row. I'm like, well, that's cool, celebs. Yeah, no, it's funny. You know who I actually saw there? I saw do you know the band Tiger Army?
I'm not,
No,
sorry.
they're like a psychobilly band that I was really into when I used to be really into the band AFI. They were like friends with all of those because they grew up together. Um, but the singer of Tiger Army, Nick 13, he like was in line at PWG, and I was like freaking out because I'm like, oh my God, what is he doing here? Like this has nothing to do with Tiger Army. Like, oh my gosh. So yeah, it was cool to just like see who showed up, and of course there was I forget everyone's names, but there were a lot of comedians who showed up there too because um, comedy and improv and wrestling go hand in hand. So there were a ton of those guys too. Um,
Like
but yeah,
Mark
it was
Maron
always
sort of style people
yep,
from the Comedy Store. Yeah.
yep,
Cool.
exactly. Yeah, so it was always fun to see who would show up.
That's awesome. It's such a shame they knocked it down. I think we actually went to the last ever show there. They were talking about buying it at the show we were at, and then obviously that never
Yeah.
came to fruition. But, better for the fans to go to somewhere that's got working toilets and, a bar you haven't got to, like, climb over 3 rows of wrestlers and selling their merch
Yep.
by the ring and stuff. Seriously, Benno, if you want to leave, if you're sat in the middle of that venue like we all were in a row, and you want to leave during a match, you have got absolutely no chance.
God,
Yeah, no,
I'd hate
exactly.
that. Oh, imagine it
And
now in COVID times. God,
Oh no.
that's not happening.
yeah, and also not only what did they like pack everyone in, like, a lot of times the wrestlers would just come into the crowd and you had to just pick your shit up and just move to the side because somebody was smacking someone with your chair. So there was and it was you just got a front row seat. There was like a pile of bodies like in the floor. It's like, oh, I was just sitting there, but now they're wrestlers. So but then very quickly people would just kind of like put the chairs back, and it was just kind of it was a known thing, like, this is going to happen, so be ready.
They were definitely the template for like every indie promotion that is currently running, sort of like in America and especially over here in the UK, just still putting on those hot matches and stuff. Yeah, they was.
Oh yeah.
They seem to. Some of the stuff might. I know obviously they'll probably do well ticket wise and stuff, but they don't seem to be like back when you were going. It was like everyone waited 3 months for those Bowler DVDs and stuff, and I feel like they might have got lost in the shuffle a bit. But I suppose that's a conversation for another day, because thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate you taking time out to talk about, obviously, being a music artist during the pandemic and your career, and obviously your experiences going to PWG. Where can people sort of find out more about you and check out your music?
Well, you can always Google Glitbiter, because
I'll type
you'll
in
find me.
clipbiter.com.
.com.
Yes, Glitbiter with a C. You can totally do that too. Seriously. But yeah, no, go. I'm on mostly Instagram, Twitter, and Bandcamp is the best way to buy my music. And keep an eye out for T-shirts because I think that's going to happen soon. But yeah, at Glitbiter. Or glitbiter.com, glitbiter.bandcamp.com. Essentially just Google Glitbiter and you'll find me. And I'm on Spotify and all the streaming stuff too. So whatever
Apple
works
Music.
for
Yep.
the listeners. Yep. Apple Music.
Indeed.
Stuff like
Indeed.
that.
Well, it's been brilliant talking to you. Thank you so much. I know you're very busy, so thanks for taking the time to come and chat with us today.
No, thank you so much for having me, and this is for a really great cause. So I'm very happy